Their final capital requirements for all large banks effective on October 1st, more gold backing to compete with BRICS gold-backed currency. I want to ask about politics and what your thoughts are right now with Kamala.
I think she's a complete and total moron, and I do. And so to point the finger at a grocery store who
That is
makes
insane.
1.5 or 2% commission or profit if they're lucky is absolutely asinine and stupid. And instead, she should look square into the face of the government who's creating $100,000 worth of debt per second. The goal of the Democratic Party is to convert undocumented immigrants into documented immigrants. This is the Cloward pivot theory.
Voters.
So if she were elected and if these things were perceived to take effect, between November and January, you would see markets collapse like you could not imagine. I will use tax money for reparations to give to African Americans because their ancestors were slaves, I guess. So she's taking money from people who never were slave owners to give it to people that were never slaves.
I'm half black, and that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
We've got India right now, who has just come out and said they're going to double their silver imports.
That's such a dangerous thing to do, to vote off of that just
it's
because.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. That's why I do these things. That's why I get out there and say these things, because we're heading into a very scary place, and people need to be aware of it. Most of these things, even well-read people, have no idea what's coming.
Connection established.
Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in. We are here with the man, the myth, the legendary Andy Shectman for another episode of the Silver Stacking Podcast, also called Let's Talk Silver. Grab some popcorn because this is going to be a good episode. Andy and I haven't done one in probably like 2 weeks, so there's a lot of catching up to do. A lot has happened, so I hope you guys will sit all the way through this because it's going to be a good one. If you want content like this on a daily basis or any other type of silver content, make sure you click subscribe. I'll do the hours of research and I'll package it up in a shiny YouTube video for you, so you don't got to do all the work. Anyways, Andy, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Too, my man. It's good to see you too. I'm good, thanks. It was nice to take a couple of days off and actually chill out and relax during the holidays. So I hope you got to do that as well.
Yeah, not really, but I mean, I guess hanging out with my daughter is, that is, yeah. But
absolutely,
yeah,
that's better, man. That's
Yeah,
better.
definitely. Yeah. So yeah, what's going on right now? I know silver is 28, and it was last week. It was like 29 something, but yeah, it's down today.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense because, I mean, let's talk about silver for a minute and why the price action, while it's maddening in many respects, I agree, but why it really doesn't make that big of a deal in the end. In fact, it's a subsidy, if you will. So let's start with the fact that we've got India right now, who has just come out and said they're going to double their silver imports this year. And just by looking at some of the numbers that we've already seen, in February, their imports surged by 260%. And they bought in February alone 2,295 tons. A lot of times these statistics come out a few months after the fact. And putting that amount into perspective, the 2,295 tons, you put that into perspective, and it's 70 million ounces more silver than the United States Mint has produced in American Eagle silver coins over the past 3 years combined. So you got India, who is on a pace to accumulate somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 tons this year. Compared to last year, they did 4,550 tons, which was a record year. They're accumulating silver at a level the world has never seen before. And, this is something that should not be taken lightly. And then, of course, when you and I did our interview with Sean, he talked about the fact that China is indeed flying around Latin America, buying the doré, buying the concentrate, paying much higher premium than the West will pay, and sending it home to be refined. And therefore, it doesn't come off of an exchange. It doesn't affect the price so much. And we can talk about the Samsung battery that everyone's talked about. If you want to chat about this here for a moment, what does that article say?
Chinese silver demand surges. Is this a calculated move? Talking
Yes.
about Shanghai has reported a significant surge in silver volume with prices consistently higher than Western exchanges. The price premium in China compared to the West as high as 10%. This signals an extremely strong demand for silver in China. Imports surged, hitting a three-year high of 390 tons last December. In June and July, imports broke through 400 tons. A year ago, imports were half of that at the 200-ton level.
Right. Right.
So
And
yeah,
but how many people even know that China is the second largest producer of silver in the
yeah.
world?
It used to be
Yeah.
Mexico and Peru.
Yeah.
So
And now
China's,
China's up to number
yeah,
two in between Mexico and Peru.
yeah.
And and yet they find it important enough to accumulate silver to whereby they are putting as high as a $4 premium. It's backed off a little bit. It's over $3 premium. It's north of 10% on the Shanghai price that they will pay for silver delivered to Shanghai versus what you can get it for in London or New York, and therefore incentivizing arbitrage. So they're the second largest producer in the world. They have an elevated premium so that they can attract anything that's not nailed down by the sophisticated traders who can buy in the West and deliver in the East. And now I've had it validated by Sean from Dolly Varden and by others like Keith Neumeyer who talk about the Chinese going throughout Latin America, paying much higher than the West will for unrefined silver in doré and concentrate form and shipping it back for refining in China. Huge deal. Of course, we can talk about the Samsung battery that everyone's talked about, the solid state battery that will achieve such benchmarks as a 600-mile radius, 20-year lifespan, and 9-minute charge. My daughter owns a Tesla, and I will tell you that it gets at best about 350 to 400 miles, and it's the extended range version. It takes at minimum, if you use a high power charger, I forgot what they're called, the quick charge that you can find like at a Target or some of the malls or whatnot that Tesla has all over the place. Minimum of 45 minutes to an hour. If she charges it at home, which is the 240-watt current, I believe, the same level that your clothes dryer runs off of, it takes all night. It will charge by the morning. Um, and of course, the lifespan, 20 years, I guess that remains to be seen how long the Tesla batteries last. But this is the real deal. And it takes as much as a kilo of silver per battery. And they're already in talks with manufacturers like Toyota and whatnot. So I'm sure Elon Musk will figure that out too. And the expansion of uses for silver is dramatic. And then one other thing I want to talk about, two other things. We find out that 2024 will be another massive deficit. It's a structural deficit now. It's the fourth year in a row that we've seen a deficit between supply and demand. It will be as much as 215 million ounces. It's the second largest in more than 20 years. So this is something that continues to, more demand than supply. Coming out of the ground at 7-1, yet priced at 85-1. I don't know if I've ever seen a better value in every way. Structural deficit, increase in demand in green and military, as the pickaxes talked about, in monetary, in things like the car batteries, all that stuff, and yet the price is befuddling. And then we see this, and this is something to me that really betrays all of it. And that is just this week, we saw 3,830 silver contracts delivered, right? Delivered. And well, that doesn't sound like a lot. Only 3,830. Multiply that times 500, you get 19,150,000 ounces delivered in one day. Now, who's got that kind of money to deliver that kind of silver? And this is something that is accelerating. So you see massive deliveries, a supply demand deficit, increase in uses, a 7-1 ratio between the price of gold divided or silver into the price of gold is 85-1 right now. We'll call that man's ratio. God's ratio, the mining ratio, is 7-1 and falling. I don't know that you could ask for a better investment in every respect ever. And so I think it doesn't help the fact that the price is counterintuitive. It makes people want to bang their head against the wall. But at some point, all of these facts have to align with reality. And this is what happens when you suppress and manipulate prices, where the LBMA admits to trading, 290 million ounces of silver per day, but they say that's 10 times understated because they only post the final settlement numbers, which would mean they're trading almost 3 billion ounces of silver per day. That's 3.5 times annual global mine supply, which is decreasing per day. They only have 300 million ounces that do not belong to someone. They have 800 million there, which, by the way, is real damn close to the lowest level they've ever had at the LBMA since they started keeping records. But 500 million plus, according to records, belong to the ETFs, SLV and Bullion Vault and all the others that are there. That means 300 million ounces, yet they're trading, they admit, to that whole stash every single day, and then 10 times that amount from there, minimum. So yeah, it's a situation where, you have to have strong fingertips, man. You got to hang on, and you got to realize that there are very few opportunities you will ever witness in your lifetime of investing that would have this impressive of a set of criteria to examine. Massive increasing demand in 3 or 4 uses. The plurality of demand is unusual in the commodity in and of itself. Military, green, digital, monetary. I mean, so and within the industrial applications, you have a gazillion, solar panels and medical devices and water purification and on and on and on. Silver is needed everywhere. And yet it's disappearing in nature. It's gone from 16 to 1 for 5,000 years to 7 to 1 mining ratio. And that the price is at the upper end of the stratosphere in terms of where it's been in its 5,000-year history, 6,000-year history. This represents less than 1/10 of 1% of the time that we've seen an 85 to 1 price ratio. I mean, in every respect, I don't know that you could find a better fundamental set of criteria to invest in. I
Yeah,
don't.
nothing makes as much sense as silver. Not even close. Not even close. It is really incredible. Like there will be people looking back after silver takes off, looking back and being like, it was so blatantly obvious. Like only
I should have
people that
listened to
get
that
it.
Silver Slayer, man. I should have listened to that dude. That's what
Right.
they're all going to be
Right.
saying.
Yep. Yep.
You're
Like there
right
will be
though,
a
and it
yeah.
is, and
Yeah.
it's maddening. It truly is maddening, but it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense, and that's the maddening part about
Yeah,
it.
like this was from jpost.com or the Jerusalem Post. It's actually a great website. They actually reached out to me and thanked me for covering another one of their articles. Really nice people. But this was posted a couple weeks ago. Industrial demand might consume the entire silver market by
Yep.
2025.
Yeah, there you go. And that's the point. And so industrial demand, what does that really mean? I mean, look at the Silver Institute numbers, and that takes out of the equation, as we've talked about before, military uses. And we know that they use a copious amount in military. That doesn't really even speak about monetary uses. And so yeah, it's one of these deals. And I know what we talk about on your channel is primarily silver, but I think it's important to also bring into the context gold because they are connected so closely. And first of all, if we look at the same criteria, gold delivered on the August contract so far is almost 30% of the entire registered category, meaning the registered category are the bars that are available for delivery backing the contracts. 30% of it was delivered already, nearly, in just the August contract. And, that works out to 4,142 100-ounce contracts. So let's see how much money that is, right? 4,142 times 100, that's 414,200 ounces. Let's just call it times 2,500. That's 1,035,500,000, if I'm not mistaken. The point of it is that who the hell's got that kind of bread to stand for that kind of delivery? In quarter 2 of 2024, over 330 tons of gold, or 10.6 million ounces of gold, was delivered off the London over-the-counter market, or the LBMA. So when you talk about gold and silver, you can see the massive value that very sophisticated investors are seeing in not only accumulating huge amounts, but give me it, taking it off the exchange, removing counterparty risk. And that's something that I think is really really worth talking about. And again, talking about the same thing we said about silver, the LBMA says they trade 17 million ounces of gold, but they admit that it is in the London Liquidity Survey. They admit that it's 10 times the daily net settled clearing volume, which would mean they're trading 170 million ounces of gold per day. It is this type of rehypothecation, this type of shenanigans that is making the rest of the world say, no, 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 I'll stand for delivery. Thank you very much. And whether it be gold or silver, this is a trend that is accelerating. And I say this, yes, as the owner of a large gold company, but more as someone who's trying to be completely straight with the public. There is no better investment I've ever seen in 34 and a half years of finance than silver, period. And gold is right there, but the leverage that you get and an asset that is still trading, almost half of its all-time peak from 1980 is something that has been skewed, its real value, skewed by the London Metals Exchange and the COMEX and the bullion bankers who suppress the price. Someday people will look back, like you said, and say, my God, why didn't I trust my gut on that? I don't know that I've ever seen a better value.
Did you see that Elon Musk tweeted about silver the other day?
No, what did he say?
So he tweeted this, and
Oh,
David
yeah, I
Morgan
did see that.
retweeted. Yeah. I mean, for people, do you think the average person would look at this and anything would click?
No,
Like,
I don't.
yeah,
Because number one, no one knows what that number one is. That's a Morgan silver dollar.
right.
And maybe my favorite way of accumulating silver. I mean, I love, love,
I
love.
love Morgan.
This is
Yeah.
a money clip that I have with the Morgan
Yeah.
silver
Oh,
dollar on it. So I
I
love the
have one right
Morgan
there.
dollars, number one. The second one is a silver certificate where it
Yeah.
basically says payable to the bearer on demand in silver coin.
Yep.
The third one is a dollar bill, a Federal Reserve note, which is been inflated away to nothing to the tune of
Yeah.
100,000 of those per second. 100,000 of those per second is being created in debt every day, 24/7. Then you have the Zimbabwe note, which
The
just,
$1 trillion bill. I used to
yep.
have
And
one
then
of
you got a
those.
bullet. And then you got a
Yeah.
bullet. So
Yeah. What do you think the bullet means? What do you
it
think that
just means that
resembles?
you used to be able, when what it means to me is that when people lose everything, they lose it. That's
Yeah.
what's his name who says that all the time. I love the guy. Guy from New York. He's very animated. I'll think of it in a moment. He does the forecast trends journal. What's his name? He does the trends journal. He's so good. Can't believe I can't think of his name at the moment. But
I,
basically, what it means is you have solid money, number one, and you can transact business. And well, okay, fine. It's easier to carry a bunch of silver certificates than the silver coin. Okay, well, now we're into dollar bills that are losing value so fast that they turn into the Zimbabwe note. And when that all goes and no one wants your currency, well, you bring in a gun instead and say, give me it, and
right.
you take it by
Right.
force. So
Yeah, I was thinking that's what I was
Gerald
thinking,
Celente,
like
by the way, Gerald
war.
Celente says when
Okay.
people lose everything, they lose it. And that's what that means
Yeah.
to me is that last step is when the whole system breaks down.
Yeah.
And in Weimar Republic, Germany, after World War I, people would take a wheelbarrow full of Reichmark to go to the store to buy a loaf of bread. They'd go in to see if there was bread. They'd come out and the wheelbarrow was gone and the money was laying on the ground. That's kind of what that is saying, is
Yeah.
that when you get to a point where the whole system breaks down monetarily, that then it becomes, the Wild West, and you better be well armed and have eyes behind your head.
Yeah, I don't think, like looking at third world countries, people literally carry their money in trash bags and they weigh their money on scales because instead of counting it, like to buy a pack of gum would take hundreds of these dollars, they just weigh their money on scales. Like you'll see the guys holding up a sign that says like broke millionaire.
Well, that's what that
And
bullet means, because
yeah,
the next step is I'm not carrying this shit around
yeah,
anymore. I'll just walk in with a gun and take it. And
yeah,
that's kind of what it means. And that's why there are bigger implications involved in the debasement of the currency, because it ends up impoverishing people. It ends up skewing the whole system. It ends up always ending badly. And more so when you talk about inflation for the poor and the underprivileged, because there's something called the Cantillon effect. I don't know if you're familiar with the Cantillon effect, but the Cantillon effect says that the people closest to the money benefit the most. And we can use the COVID money as an example. Okay, It takes time for the money to filter its way, trickle down through the system. So the very, very wealthy who have access to that money, let's say like the hedge funds or people who can borrow money at next to nothing, or the very, very wealthy have access to that money and they immediately buy assets. They'll take that cheap money and buy assets with it. So those assets in an inflationary environment go much higher. The wealthy typically have massive accumulations of assets more than they have large bank accounts, which they probably do anyway, but not as big as their asset base. And as by the time the money filters down all the way down, it can be a couple of years, like right now. And we have inflation. I don't care what the CPI says. Inflation, according to John Williams, I just watched him the other day, is 8% higher than what they say. It's 11%. So if you've had the chance to accumulate, gold as an example, for this entire year, it's up 25%. By the time the money comes down to the people who then have access to it across the broad economy, it's already lost 8, 9, 10% of its value to inflation. So again, it's very insidious. And that's what that is talking about there, is that, when it all breaks down, people have no choice but to take it by force, because what else are they going to do when your kids are hungry? But the Cantillon effect is real. And in an inflationary environment, the wealthy who have access to the money before it filters down to the public through payroll or whatnot, and it can take a long time, all of that money injected into the system, they have benefit to it most. Like, what have we heard during all the money that was injected? Where did it go? It went into financial assets. And that's why you saw stocks, bonds, and real estate go to the moon. Don't forget about gold and silver that should have gone up. They were stepped on by the banks. But stocks, bonds, and real estate went because the wealthy bought it. And when that money comes out, as we're seeing some of it come out and go back into goods and services, it trickles down through the system. That's why there's a lag between the time that the Fed creates that money and it gets into the system. And by the time it works its way all the way down, it can be a couple of years. Well, the wealthy had bought assets 2 years ago that have appreciated tremendously. That's the Cantillon effect. People closest to the money spigot benefit disproportionately. And so we are witnessing a period of time where ultimately the dollar bill, if I understand that properly, it started out with sound money. Sound money was transitioned to sound money paper that is
Right.
redeemable for the sound money,
Yeah.
which then became paper with no redeemability, which now is on its way to hyperinflation because there is no way to get out of this inflationary cycle without stopping spending, at least. And if you just balance the budget today, we still have 160 or 70 trillion in unfunded liabilities and $35 trillion balance sheet. Forget about the debt, but if we just balance the budget, we have so many liabilities both on balance sheet and off that inflation is here to stay, period.
An interesting thing about this picture is look where he says you are here. He says it after he's saying that we are now entering the Zimbabwe $1 trillion bill where our money is literally worthless.
Well, let me show it to you in a different way. And I think here's another way of understanding it. In 1971, a 400-ounce gold bar was $14,000. In 2000, that 400-ounce gold bar was $115,000. Today, it's $1 million. Let's do it the other way. In 1971, 400 ounces of gold was worth $14,000. In 2000, 49 ounces of gold was worth $14,000. And today, 6 ounces of gold is worth $14,000. And so what we are seeing is gold going higher, or is the currency, like Elon is saying, becoming worthless? It becomes worth less through all the printing until it becomes worthless. And that's kind of where we are in the system. And he's right. He's totally right. Jay, he's totally right, man. 100%.
Now, I'm going to bring another. I figured I wanted to take this interview more or this podcast more into a lot of topics I've been making videos about lately. I've been talking about some really interesting stuff. I want your takes on this. This is something that's happening on October 1st, what the Federal Reserve is announcing. Their final capital requirements for all large banks effective on October 1st, more gold backing to compete with BRICS gold-backed currency. This is the actual press release showing. So what do you think about this? Just about a month ago, we predicted the U.S. was not just going to sit back and allow BRICS to roll over them with their new gold-backed currency. competing with the dollar. So yeah, they are basically saying that the Federal Reserve is on the verge of finalizing individual capital requirements for large banks. These new requirements are not just another set of rules, but intended to keep the U.S. dollar stronger against BRICS. Basically meaning banks have to keep a minimum of 4.5% of like real money, tier one stuff, to try to help the dollar, I guess. There's a whole bunch of points about it, but that's basically what it is. What do you think about that?
Well, think about that for a moment. First of all, since the pandemic, it's been a 0% reserve requirement. And think about how crazy that is, that only 4.5% reserve
Yeah.
requirement is what is needed.
Yeah.
So, that means they have $4.50 for every $100 that they have to keep that on hand. So what if, $10 worth of um, deposits want redemption? That means they have to sell assets. It's a
Mm.
step in the right direction, of course, but it just goes to show how far these banks are from being sound. If 4.5% is the requirement, certainly it does shine a light on the validity of gold, and maybe indeed we will see some of the Western commercial banks start loading up on gold, and it takes out of the equation the ability to have paper gold as listed as gold on your balance sheet. So it has to be unencumbered physical gold. So that's beneficial. And look, the IMF, which is the Western friendly institution, we've talked about this on your show a lot. Kristalina Georgieva said a CBDC that's not pegged to something is fiat. And if you were to Google um, gold as an international reserve currency, and highlight that word, international reserve currency, a barbarous relic no more, question mark, you would see a report that was authored by the IMF at the beginning of 2023. They understand what gold represents, and this is a transition towards the Basel III initiative, where gold is being recognized as a high quality liquid asset, in essence, as good as the dollar, as good as cash, or really as good as gold. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to do that because the banks are massively, massively over leveraged and undercapitalized. For the past several years, they've been required to maintain a 0% um, reserve requirement. So yeah, that's a step in the right direction.
Do you think this will affect the markets at all on October 1st? Since a lot of times speculation, like, the days leading up to Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell saying something, the markets go crazy because people are, trying to guess or predict or assume what he's going to do. Like, do you think this type of situation would happen? Like, the couple weeks or days leading up, people are going to scramble, because of this decision?
Yeah, the only thing that I think about is that, I mean, I hope that they have been adding to their reserves over the last year or so, because to go from 0 to 4.5% when you have, I don't know how many hundreds of billions of dollars or more on deposit, as some of these big banks would, that could present a problem. I read a report just this week, by the way, as a side note, that was talking about some trouble that TD Bank had found themselves in, after it appears that they've been taking laundered drug money or something along those lines. And basically, the author said that he was told in confidence that it's going to move to the United States, where one of the big commercial banks is going to be in trouble, and more or less intimated it was Bank of America. Now, I don't know that to be true, but you look at a bank like Bank of America, not only are they holding 1 billion ounces of silver short, but about 35 to 40 million ounces of gold short in paper. What does it do to a bank like that, who is, again, wickedly leveraged, wickedly undercapitalized? And if something were to happen to this bank and all of the derivatives, even in precious metals, what would that do to the whole system? The systemic nature of all of these banks, the incestuous systemic nature, where they're all tied together like in a web, is very, very concerning. So that's why they're doing this. But are they going to sacrifice one of the big boys at the altar? Don't know. I think they will. And if they did, it would, in my mind, be Bank of America first on the chopping block.
Yeah, Bank of America is always very bullish on silver when they give their forecasts. Yeah, I made this video about this, and the video blew up. People are very interested in this conversation.
Out at Turkey, who's
What
been one
was
of the
that?
largest producers of gold and silver, or accumulators of gold and silver in the world, over the last year or two has just formally applied to BRICS. They had asked to be admitted to the European Union. They were rejected, and now they're like, okay, fine, we're going to join the BRICS. And you can see things breaking down in Turkey, which has always been an ally of the West. Two officers in the Navy who were in Turkey they tried to abduct them yesterday. An angry mob of people threw a bag over one of the guy's head and tried to take him. And luckily they were rescued. But point of it is that things are breaking down even in Western friendly jurisdictions. And so sides are being chosen. And you can see when a country like Turkey is massively accumulating gold and silver and then applying to BRICS, this is the kind of firepower, if you will, you have behind precious metals as an alternative to a dollar that is losing faith and confidence in around the globe. And the dollar right now is backed by only confidence. So why would you ever want to own dollars when you could own a depleting asset like silver or gold, which are accelerating in demand globally and legitimacy? So I think we really haven't seen anything yet, Jay, in terms of where this all ends up. And although it is annoying that silver would fall back to $28 ish, it's something that I think if you've been at this as long as I have, you understand how this all plays out. But when you see the physical demand across the globe, naked shorting this market will not be as easy or as risk-free as it used to be for the commercial banks in years past. Maybe this last push down is an attempt to get out of their short positions, to transfer that risk to the hedge funds and let the price rise. One of these days, that will be the playbook. I think we're getting closer to that as the election and the big BRICS meeting draws near. And really the dollar is continuing to show cracks. So yeah, I think this will be something that, we're not out of the volatility yet. You got to hang on and trust your gut, trust the math. This is all about math right now. And the fact that they're able to push the price down 28 baffles me, but it's not something that I think will last very long.
Yeah, it can't. I mean, we just broke past 12-year highs. You don't think we're going to get back to there eventually after just doing that? Like, this is the article I wanted to share. This is incredible. So, last Friday, the United States Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said, quote, "The time has come to begin lowering interest rates, a process that will likely begin at the Fed's September 17th through 18th meeting. Markets are widely anticipating a 25 basis point cut or even 50 points if the economy looks weak and needs a stronger monetary boost. More reductions could follow before year's end. If the Fed follows through, it will cause bond yields to weaken further, the dollar to weaken, and more commodity prices to strengthen. When positive real interest rates, which favor bond investors, turn negative, it will especially affect gold and silver to the upside." But the thing is, and he's talking about like silver maintaining, its price. The thing is, when silver breaks out later this year or next, it will receive the same rush of attention and spectacular cash that gold is currently enjoying. As such, the price target will not simply just be $29 or $31. Instead, the initial goal will be 35 or higher. That's greater than 50% move from here, and one from which you could greatly profit if you get correctly positioned before it begins. That was pretty interesting, and I like how he broke that down, especially with the Fed's September 17th, 18th meeting and what that could bring.
Yeah, 100%. It's, ask yourself, why would he do such a thing when the national debt is already above 35 trillion, when the stock market is at or near all-time highs, when house prices are 75% higher than the 2006 peak, even though they've come down a little bit, when supposedly they tell us that GDP is growing strongly and inflation is still 50% above their target. You know why he's doing? Because he knows the reported numbers are bullshit. That's why. And he knows that inflation will only drive their stocks higher and make their debt easier to pay off. That's why he's doing it. He's trapped. And he knows it. And just a few weeks ago, he said the chances of a hard landing are low. And now all of a sudden there's a 50 basis point cut. But the troubling thing to me is that, they're making it look like they're trying to fight inflation, but they're not. In fact, they're waving the flag on inflation. And what they are actually doing is they're pivoting to unemployment, which they're the dual mandate of inflation and employment. But the crazy thing about that is that almost every time that this happens, unemployment, which is increasing, is a lagging indicator. All of these recession indicators are already flashing a red light. And to see the Fed pivot due to unemployment tells me that they know that this is coming, but unemployment is a lagging indicator. We're already in a recession. And I don't think that it's a positive thing as they are spinning it to be. In fact, they've just given up on fighting inflation. Inflation ain't going away. What we have right now is stagflation. That's inflation that will be unrelenting with little or no economic growth, which is the worst thing. That's the hyperinflation or the Great Depression meets the printing press, I guess, is an easier way of saying it. Now we're not quite there yet, but that's the path that we're heading down. If indeed they pivot again, and ask yourself, as it is right now, who the hell would want to buy our treasuries of any duration whatsoever when rates are going lower and the inflation engine is only going higher?
So I want to ask a question, but I don't want to get you too
Sorry about that.
fed
Was
up.
the UPS
No,
guy, so I'm sorry
oh, it's
about that.
okay. No, I'll edit that out. But so I want to ask about politics and what your thoughts are right now with Kamala and all that. I saw that. I don't know if you know Lex Friedman, but he just interviewed Donald Trump, posted like an hour ago. I'm gonna watch that. But what are your thoughts with Kamala right now, or that interview so that she did?
I think she's a complete and total moron. And I mean, I do. I
Yeah.
mean, she's talking about, first of all, she talks about the greedy grocery stores and greedy shop owners and greedy businesses, and which is just absolutely insanity. It's the greedy government that causes price inflation. It's the idiocy of someone like her who points to rising prices as being in the cause of inflation. And when it has nothing to do with prices. Rising prices are the symptom of inflation, which is always a monetary event. It is an increase in the money supply. And so to point the finger at a grocery store who
That
who
is
makes
insane.
1.5 or 2% commission or profit if they're lucky is absolutely asinine and stupid. And instead, she should look square into the face of the government who's creating $100,000 worth of debt per second, 24/7, printing $1 trillion worth of debt every 100 days. It took 200 years to do that the first time. And then at the same time, she's talking about raising capital gains from 20% to 44%. Are you kidding me? What would happen to the stock market? It would collapse. And she's talking about raising or imposing unrealized gains on very, very, very wealthy people. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to sell everything they own that has massive gains before that happens. So if she were elected, and if these things were perceived to take effect between November and January, you would see markets collapse like you could not imagine. And just the fact of raising capital gains rate will make everyone sell. I mean, if it's going to, you're talking from doubling the capital gains rate. It's just insane. And then she's talking about, of course, I got a couple other ones from her too, but she's talking about, giving a tax credit for people with new babies. Okay, fine, 6 grand. Okay, whatever. Well, our population is dwindling. Okay, fine, but giving $25,000 money for a new house to 400,000 people plus a tax credit for that. Where's that money going to come from? We're going to have to print it or borrow it. And then she comes out and does what I just can't even believe that she said. She just came out and said that if when she's elected, that she told Al Sharpton, she said, use um, I will use tax money for reparations to give to African Americans because their ancestors were slaves, I guess.
So they're just
And
gonna
so she's
pop.
taking money from people who never were slave owners to give it to people that were never slaves. The whole thing is
Right.
just ridiculous. And she's going to
That's
take the money, the taxpayer money. She just told Al Sharpton that, and that was in an interview. And one last thing I guess you can say, you get an interview, two things. One, California State Senate, and where she's from, just passed a bill to allow illegal immigrants to buy homes with zero down payment and zero interest up to $150,000, and they never
Yeah.
need to pay it back if they never sell the house. Interesting.
Yeah.
Where's that going to come from? You wonder why people are walking across the border for shit like this. And then Bill Maher was doing an interview with Nancy Pelosi, and he said, listen, Nancy, the California lawmakers are giving government assistance to undocumented immigrants to buy houses. You know what she said? The goal of she said this, the goal of the Democratic Party is to convert undocumented immigrants into documented immigrants. This is the Cloward-Piven theory.
Voters.
This is the Cloward-Piven theory. People need to read that. I've talked with you about that before. Cloward-Piven theory, which they are doing right now, was a class taught at Columbia University in the 60s, where Obama went and where Bill Barr and Eric Holder and the current what's his name? The current chief of staff, I forgot what's his name. That doesn't even matter. But also Jared Bernstein, all of these, the lead economic advisor, they all went there. But this is the Cloward-Piven theory, where you create a loyal serfdom of voters through mass immigration.
Yeah.
That will never vote Republican ever again. Right. Never.
And that's why she's doing that with the black thing too, right?
Yes.
Try to get the black voters.
So,
I'm half black. I'm half black, and that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
That's just stupid. It is. I mean, if you were all black, would you walk around and every white person you see say you're a slave owner, you're familyless? Right. I mean, it's just so stupid. You can't make it up. You can't. But how do I feel about her? I feel that her administration, the Biden administration, has done more to destroy this country than any external foe could have ever done in the last 4 years. You put her in again with these socialist ideas. We're done as a country.
We can't catch back up in
republic. We're done.
Yeah, we can't. In 4 years, it will. Yeah, that's so scary to think about, and how so many people are oblivious to all this. They're just voting off of vibes just because she's a woman and she's black. They're not voting off of policy. They're not voting off of what this could do to help the country. It's just all off of don't put Trump in office, and that's such a dangerous thing to do, to vote off of that just
it's
because.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's very disappointing, and that's a sign of the times. That's why that's why I do these things. That's why I get out there and say these things, because we're heading into a very scary place, and people need to be aware of it. Most of these things, even well-read people, have no idea what's coming.
Yeah. Wow. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? I know you mentioned, was that Turkey joining the BRICS?
Turkey has applied officially to the BRICS, and they're one of the largest producers of gold, or accumulators of gold in the world the last couple of years. So yeah, it's no coincidence in that.
You know what I just thought about? I also don't think it's a coincidence that October 1st, they're announcing that, because that's the month of the BRICS meeting as well. They're on October 1st, they're doing that to combat the BRICS' gold-backed currency. So maybe that's not ironic that both are in October.
I think most of what we see is not ironic. It's moronic, but not ironic. And, but these will be some very interesting months and very interesting weeks and days ahead leading up to the BRICS meeting in Russia in October and the election in November, God willing, that we get there. But I don't know. I don't know that I've ever seen more interesting times in my career, ever.
Yeah. Well, we could wrap it up here. I know we're going to do this every Tuesday, so you guys can expect that. So yeah. Anyways, I appreciate you for taking time to come on, and
always, man. I look forward to it. I'm sorry it's been a little bit of a break. I've been traveling a bit, but I look forward to picking up where we left off. And I really enjoy being here with you, our friendship, our conversations, and I look forward to picking up where we left off next week, and riding shotgun with you through all this craziness.
Yeah. I'm excited for that, at least. One thing, building relationships and all that.
I also will mention that I'm starting my own podcast. I have now everything set up. And you, my friend, will be one of the very first guests, and a repeat guest. So someone gets to ask you the questions moving forward.
Yeah,
and
that's man.
But I still want to come on your show every week too, and get the information out any way I can.
You doing a podcast on your own channel, you would blow up. Like that would be so cool. I would love that. You should
Well, you're
definitely
coming
do
on
that.
and you'll be a regular part of it.
Yeah.
And, you know,
You should get like an editor. Like you should really do the thing, you know? Like
I am.
you
I
could,
have an
yeah.
editor. I found an editor from my friend Kerry Lutz, one that he uses, and I'm looking
Dude, that's
forward to doing it.
exciting.
But
That's
you can
so
consider
exciting.
yourself to be a regular contributor to said
Cool.
podcast. And like I said, I'll be here every Tuesday and
Yeah.
indefinitely as long as you and your listeners will have me. But I
Yeah.
appreciate you, brother. I truly do. And I
Yeah.
look forward to chatting with you next week.
Yeah, same. All right, folks, you guys can also email me or call me. I will actually, so many people are surprised when I answer the phone. Like when they call, they're like, I figured I would leave a voicemail. I'm like, no, like I will answer the phone when you call. They're like, I'm speaking to a YouTuber right now. I was like, yeah, well, I'll answer the phone if you call me. Or you could email me, slayer@milesfranklin.com, or you could text me, you know. But yeah, we got some good deals right now. And, join the newsletter because the new price sheet should be out soon as well. So yeah, anyways, thanks for tuning in. This was Silver Slayer. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.